William Carter stirred awake, disoriented and enveloped in a haze of sterile white light and the faint beeping of machines. The sharp scent of antiseptic stung his nostrils as he blinked several times, trying to focus his blurry vision. It felt as if he had been submerged in a deep, dark ocean, and now, gasping for air, he was thrust into a world that made no sense. The room around him was unfamiliar, the walls painted in muted pastel tones, adorned with abstract art that seemed to mock his confusion. "Mr. Carter, can you hear me?" A gentle voice pierced through the fog. A nurse, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, leaned over him with an expression of concern etched on her face. Her name tag read, "Lucy." William nodded slowly, his throat dry and scratchy. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. "You were in a car accident," Lucy explained, adjusting the IV drip connected to his arm. "You've been unconscious for a few days. How are you feeling?" "Car accident?" The words felt foreign on his tongue, as if he were speaking a different language. What happened to me?" "Your memory may be a bit foggy right now," she said, her voice soothing yet firm. "You've suffered a concussion. It's normal to feel confused. Just take it one step at a time." William tried to process her words, but a sense of dread washed over him. "I don't remember anything," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know who I am." Lucy's expression softened further, and she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "That's okay, Mr. Carter. We're here to help you. You're in a safe place. Just focus on feeling better." As he lay there, staring at the ceiling, a gnawing fear settled in the pit of his stomach. Who was he? The question echoed in his mind, relentless and unyielding. After what felt like an eternity, William was finally able to sit up. His muscles protested, but he pushed through, determined to understand the situation better. As he glanced around the room, his eyes caught sight of a framed photo on the bedside table. He reached for it, his fingers trembling slightly. The image depicted a man in a sharply tailored tuxedo, standing confidently beside a beautiful woman in an elegant gown. They were surrounded by opulence, luxurious cars, grand chandeliers, and an extravagant mansion in the background. The man in the photo looked like he could have been a movie star, exuding charm and charisma. Yet despite the familiarity of the face, William felt no connection to it. "Who is this?" he murmured, his voice tinged with confusion. "That's you, Mr. Carter," Lucy said gently, watching him closely. "Before the accident, you were quite successful in the business world. A lot of people knew you." William stared at the photograph, trying to reconcile the image with the emptiness he felt inside. "I don't remember," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't even know my own name." "You're William Carter," Lucy reiterated, her tone steady. "You had a prominent position in your company, but right now it's important to take care of yourself and focus on recovery. We can help you piece things together as you regain your memory." William took a deep breath, the weight of her words sinking in. A successful businessman, yet he felt like a ghost, devoid of substance and history. He wondered about his life before the accident. Was it as glamorous as it appeared in the picture, or was there more lurking beneath the surface? After a few days of rest and observation, the doctors decided William was stable enough to be discharged. The world outside the hospital loomed as he stepped through the automatic doors, a rush of fresh air hitting him like a wave. Sunlight bathed the town in a warm glow, illuminating the streets lined with small shops and quaint houses. He wandered aimlessly, his mind racing with questions. Was he truly the man in that photograph, a wealthy businessman? The thought felt surreal, as if he were stepping into someone else's life. As he walked, he found his feet leading him to a small diner that caught his eye. It was a humble establishment, its neon sign flickering in the afternoon sun. Pushing open the door, the bell jingled above him, and he was greeted by the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. The interior was simple but inviting, with red vinyl booths and checkered floors. A few patrons occupied the tables, their laughter and chatter creating a warm ambiance. "Hey there, what can I get for you?" A waitress approached, her name tag reading Sarah. She was young, with a friendly smile and bright eyes that sparkled with curiosity. William hesitated, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in his surroundings. "You look a little lost," Sarah said, her tone teasing but kind. "First time here?" "Something like that," he replied, forcing a smile as he took a seat at the counter. "I just got out of the hospital." Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. "Oh no, what happened? You don't look too good." "I was in a car accident," he explained, his heart racing as he tried to find the right words. "I don't remember anything. Who I am, anything about my life. It's all a blank slate." "Wow, that's rough," she said, her voice softening. "I can't even imagine. But hey, you're here now. That's what matters, right? Want some coffee? It'll help wake you up." William nodded gratefully. "Yes, please. I could use something to clear my head." As Sarah poured him a cup, he couldn't help but study her. There was something genuine about her, a warmth that contrasted sharply with the sterile environment of the hospital. He felt an inexplicable urge to open up, to share his fragmented existence with her. "Do you think it's possible to start over?" he asked suddenly, looking her in the eyes. "To completely reinvent yourself?" "Absolutely," she replied, setting the coffee in front of him. "I mean, look around. People here are always changing, growing. It's part of life. You can be whoever you want to be, just take it one day at a time." William considered her words, the thought settling deep within him. Perhaps this was an opportunity, an unexpected chance to redefine himself. But the shadows of his past loomed large, casting doubt on the possibility of a fresh start. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, finally taking a sip of the coffee. It was strong and rich, a welcome comfort to his frayed nerves. "I'm not sure where to go from here, but I appreciate your kindness." She smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Just take a deep breath. You're not alone in this. We're all just trying to figure things out, one step at a time." As William sat there, sipping his coffee and listening to the hum of conversation around him, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to navigate this new reality. Each moment held the potential for discovery, and perhaps he could uncover more than just his identity. Perhaps he could find a sense of belonging in a world that had once seemed so foreign. William stepped out of the diner, the bell above the door jingling softly behind him. The sun was brighter than he remembered, illuminating a world that felt simultaneously foreign and inviting. The quaint town of Maplewood stretched out before him, a tapestry of small shops, green parks, and a river that wound through like a silver ribbon. He took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. This new life, though marked by uncertainty, was refreshingly simple. As he ambled down the main street, curiosity tugged at him. He wandered past a bookstore with a wooden sign swaying gently in the breeze, its windows filled with colorful covers and inviting titles. A few steps further, he paused to admire a local craft shop, its shelves brimming with handmade pottery and woven baskets. Each item told a story, a stark contrast to the sterile luxury he had glimpsed in the photograph back in the hospital room. "Hey there, you look a bit lost," a cheerful voice broke through his reverie. William turned to see a middle-aged woman, her hands covered in paint, standing in front of a small art studio. The building was vibrant, its walls splashed with color and adorned with murals that seemed to dance in the sunlight. I'm just exploring," he replied, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Exploring is good. I'm Claire, by the way. I run the studio here. We're having a painting session right now, if you're interested. No experience necessary." She smiled warmly, her enthusiasm infectious. William hesitated for a moment, the idea of painting stirring something within him. "I've never really painted before," he admitted. "Neither have most of the people who come here. It's all about having fun and expressing yourself. Come on in, I'll show you the ropes," Claire urged, gesturing to the bright interior. Intrigued, William followed her inside. The studio was filled with laughter and chatter. Several people were scattered around tables, each focused on their canvases. The air was thick with the smell of paint and creativity. As he settled at a table, Claire handed him a brush and a palette of colors. "Just let your imagination guide you. There are no rules here," she encouraged. William looked down at the blank canvas before him, feeling a strange flutter of excitement mixed with apprehension. He dipped the brush into blue paint and hesitated. What should he create? The vibrant colors seemed to beckon him, urging him to express something deep within. "Just start with something simple," Claire suggested, noticing his hesitation. Maybe a landscape or something abstract. He took a deep breath, allowing the brush to glide across the canvas, the cool paint spreading beneath his strokes. With each movement, he felt a weight lifting off him, as if he were shedding layers of his old identity. The blue morphed into swirling patterns, and soon hints of green and yellow joined in, creating a landscape that felt alive. "Wow, that's beautiful!" a voice exclaimed from across the table. It was a young woman with curly hair and paint splattered on her apron. "Thanks, I'm just experimenting," William replied, a smile creeping onto his face. "Experimenting is the best part. I'm Emma, by the way," she said, leaning in to get a better look at his work. "What inspired you?" "I'm not really sure," he confessed, glancing at the canvas. "I guess I'm just trying to find out who I am." "Art has a way of doing that," Emma replied thoughtfully. "It helps us discover parts of ourselves we didn't even know existed. You'll find your voice here." As the hours passed, William lost himself in the colors and textures, the world around him fading away. Laughter and conversations filled the studio, and for the first time in what felt like ages, he felt a sense of belonging. When the session concluded, Claire gathered everyone for a group picture, and William, still buzzing from the experience, felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. He realized he had not only created something beautiful, but had also made connections. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Maplewood, he returned to the diner. Sarah was working behind the counter, her hair tied up in a messy bun, her cheeks flushed from the day's work. She looked up and beamed when she saw him. "Hey, you're back! How was your day?" she asked, pouring him a cup of coffee. "It was incredible. I went to an art studio and painted for the first time," he said, his excitement spilling over. "I think I might actually have a talent for it." "Really? That's amazing. Show me." Sarah leaned forward, her interest piqued. William dug into his bag and pulled out a small sketchbook filled with the day's creations. He flipped it open, revealing the colorful pages. "This is what I made," he said, turning the sketchbook towards her. "Oh, wow. I love this one," Sarah exclaimed, pointing to a swirling landscape of blues and greens. "It's so vibrant and alive." "Thanks. I'm still figuring it all out. It feels freeing," William admitted, leaning back in his chair, his heart lighter than it had been in days. "Art is a great way to express yourself. I always wanted to learn how to paint but never had the time," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. "You should join me next time. We could make it a fun outing," he suggested, the idea forming in his mind. "Count me in. I could use a little creativity in my life," she replied, her smile wide and genuine. Their conversation flowed easily, and as they talked about art and dreams, William felt an undeniable connection growing between them. He had spent so long feeling like a ghost in his own life, but here in this little diner, he was starting to feel real again. "William," Sarah said suddenly, her expression serious, "I know you've been through a lot. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here." He looked into her eyes, seeing the sincerity in her gaze. "Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. It's just, everything is still so confusing. I'm trying to figure out who I am now." "I can't imagine how hard that must be," she said softly, "but you're not alone in this. You have us, the community. We're all here to support each other." Her words struck a chord in him. In his previous life, surrounded by wealth and power, he had often felt isolated, disconnected from those around him. But here in this small town, it was different. He felt embraced by a warmth he had never known before. As their conversation drifted into the night, William realized that he was beginning to discover pieces of himself he had lost long ago. The laughter, the art, and the genuine connections were all threads weaving a new tapestry of his life, one that was rich with meaning and filled with possibility. And in that moment he understood that perhaps he had not just survived the accident, but had been given a second chance to truly live. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the community center, where the annual Harvest Festival was in full swing. Vibrant decorations adorned the walls, and the air buzzed with the sounds of laughter, chatter, and the clinking of glasses. William Carter stood at the center of it all, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. For the first time since his life had been turned upside down, he was about to showcase his artwork to the very people who had welcomed him so warmly into their lives. He glanced down at the makeshift easel that held his latest painting, a large canvas filled with vibrant colors that seemed to dance in the evening light. He had poured his heart into this piece, channeling the emotions and memories he had unearthed during his time in the town. A sense of pride washed over him as he recalled the late nights spent with the local artists, learning the craft and discovering a passion he never knew existed. "William, are you ready?" Sarah's voice broke through his reverie. She approached, her smile brightening the space around her. Dressed in a flowing sundress, she twirled playfully, her hair catching the light. "You're going to knock their socks off?" He chuckled, the warmth of her enthusiasm infectious. "I hope so, but what if they don't like it?" The doubt crept in again, a shadow looming over the joy he had felt in the weeks leading up to this moment. "Forget about that. Just remember, you're sharing a piece of your heart," she replied, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "And besides, they're not here to judge, they're here to celebrate. You've become part of this community, and they're excited to see what you've created." "Thanks, Sarah. That means a lot," William said, feeling a swell of gratitude for her unwavering support. He had never imagined forming such a deep connection with someone so quickly. In his previous life, relationships had often felt transactional, built on status and power. But here in this humble town, friendships blossomed from shared experiences and genuine care. As the evening unfolded, the community center filled with familiar faces, each one radiating warmth and encouragement. William's heart swelled as he greeted people he had come to know, artists, families, and neighbors who had embraced him despite the shadows of his past. The air was thick with anticipation as local musicians began to play, their melodies weaving through the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," the voice of the community center director echoed through the space. "We have a special treat for you tonight. We are thrilled to showcase the artwork of a new friend and talented artist who has joined our community, William Carter." A round of applause erupted, followed by cheers and whistles. William's face flushed with a mix of pride and nerves as he stepped forward, the spotlight warming his skin. He glanced at Sarah, who beamed at him from the back of the room, giving him an encouraging thumbs up. "Thank you all for the warm welcome," he began, his voice shaky, but growing steadier as he continued. "This painting represents my journey since I arrived here. It's about discovery, connection, and the beauty of simplicity. I've learned so much from each of you, and I hope this piece resonates with your experiences too." As he spoke, he gestured to the canvas, a swirl of colors that depicted the town's landscape, intermingled with abstract forms that symbolized the chaos of his past. It was a representation of his struggle to find himself amidst the unknown, a reflection of the newfound clarity he had gained. The crowd was captivated, their eyes glued to the canvas. "Wow, it's beautiful," a voice called out from the crowd, and others murmured in agreement. "Do you offer classes? I'd love to learn." Another chimed in and laughter erupted. Feeling buoyed by their appreciation, William stepped back, allowing the crowd to admire his work. Before he knew it, people were gathering around, sharing their interpretations and stories connected to his painting, forging a bond that felt deeper than words. As the evening progressed, William found himself swept into conversations, laughter, and connections that felt genuine and fulfilling. But amidst the joy, a thought nagged at him, a sense of foreboding that he couldn't shake. Just as he began to relax into the evening, a shadow fell over his thoughts. William felt a tug at the back of his mind, a reminder of the letter he had received days earlier. The envelope had been unmarked, the handwriting unfamiliar, yet the message had been clear. "Your past is waiting for you. Uncover the truth." The words echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the life he had left behind, one filled with luxury and power. But was it really worth returning to? He glanced around at the smiling faces, the warmth of community he had found here, and felt the tension of that decision bearing down on him like a heavy weight. "William," Sarah's voice brought him back to the present. She stood beside him holding a glass of sparkling cider. Let's toast to new beginnings. Absolutely, he replied, raising his glass. To new beginnings. Their glasses clinked, and he felt a surge of hope and possibility. As the festival continued, laughter echoed through the hall, and William immersed himself in the joy of the moment. But deep down, the letter lingered, a spectre of his past haunting the edges of his newfound life. Later that night, as the festival began to wind down, William found a quiet corner to collect his thoughts. He leaned against the wall, watching people dance and celebrate, their joy palpable. In that moment, a nagging question surfaced. Who was he really? The man who had once wielded power and influence, or the man he had become, a man who found solace in painting and community? Suddenly, he felt a presence beside him. It was Sarah, her expression thoughtful. You look deep in thought. Just reflecting, I guess, he admitted, his gaze still fixed on the crowd. It's hard to reconcile everything I've been through with who I am now. I get that, she said softly, crossing her arms. But whatever your past may hold, it doesn't define you. You've created something beautiful here, and you're surrounded by people who care about you. Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate you saying that, he replied, feeling a warmth spread through him. But what about that letter? She asked, her curiosity evident. Are you going to find out who sent it? William hesitated, the conflict within him surfacing once more. I don't know. Part of me wants to forget about it, to focus on what I've built here, but another part of me is curious, I guess. Curiosity can be a double-edged sword, she said, tilting her head, but you don't have to face it alone. Whatever happens, I'm here for you. He met her gaze, and in that moment, he felt an undeniable connection, one that transcended the complexities of his past. Thank you, Sarah. That means more than you know. As the festival came to a close, William made a choice. He would focus on the life he was building, the friendships he was nurturing, and the art he was creating. The letter could wait. For now, he would embrace the present, taking one step at a time into a future filled with possibility. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quaint streets of the small town where William Carter had begun to forge a new life. It was a stark contrast to the world of opulence and ambition he could barely remember. As he strolled through the park, the gentle rustle of leaves felt like a whisper of freedom. He had grown to appreciate the simplicity around him, but beneath that tranquility lay an undercurrent of anxiety that had begun to surface in the past few days. His thoughts were interrupted when a tall figure approached him, a man with sharp features and an air of authority. William felt an instinctual tension rise within him as the man drew closer. He wore a tailored suit that seemed out of place in the relaxed atmosphere of the park. "William Carter?" the man asked, his voice smooth yet imposing. "Yes, that's me," William replied cautiously, taking a step back. "Can I help you?" The man extended a business card, the name Daniel Frost embossed in silver lettering. "I'm a private investigator. I need to speak with you about your past." William's heart raced. The mention of his past felt like a ghost lurking just out of sight, and he wasn't ready to confront it. "I'm not interested," he said firmly, determined not to let this stranger invade the life he was beginning to build here. Frost raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "You might want to reconsider. You can't just escape who you are, Mr. Carter. Your old life will come knocking, whether you like it or not." William glanced around, suddenly aware of how vulnerable he felt. He had built these new connections, forged bonds that felt genuine, and he didn't want to jeopardize that. "I'm not going back," he insisted, his voice stronger than he felt. "I'm happy here." "Happy?" Frost scoffed. "You think this quaint little town will fulfill you? You don't belong here. You have responsibilities, people expecting you to return to the life you left behind." William clenched his fists, feeling anger bubble beneath the surface. "You don't know me. You have no idea what I've been through." Frost leaned in, his expression shifting to something more serious. "I know enough. You were a powerful businessman, and there are people who will not let you forget that. They're waiting for you to reclaim your place in that world." William took a deep breath, fighting against the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. I don't want that life. I've found something real here. Something that matters. Real? Frost's voice dripped with skepticism. What about the wealth, the influence? You think those people you're associating with will be there for you when the chips are down? They're not your kind. William's resolve wavered for a moment as doubt crept in. The investigator's words echoed in his mind, reminding him of the polished mirrors and empty conversations of his previous existence. Yet, the thought of leaving behind the warmth he had found in this community filled him with dread. I refuse to believe that, he said, his voice firm. I've made choices. I've chosen this life and I'm not going back. Frost's eyes narrowed, as if weighing William's resolve. Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you. The past has a way of catching up. You'll hear from me again. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving William standing in the fading light, a storm of emotions brewing within him. William felt shaken. The encounter left him questioning everything he had come to embrace in this new life. Would he truly be able to escape his past? He wandered back to the diner, seeking solace in the familiar atmosphere and the friendly faces of Sarah and the locals. As he entered, Sarah was behind the counter, her smile brightening the dimly lit room. "Hey, stranger, you look like you've seen a ghost," she said, wiping her hands on a towel as she approached him. "Just had a conversation with someone," he replied, trying to shake off the unease. "Nothing to worry about." "You sure? You seem a bit off." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, concern etching her features. William hesitated, unsure if he wanted to share the details. "It was just a guy from my past. He thinks I should go back to my old life." Sarah frowned, her brows furrowing. "What do you want, William? Do you really think you'd be happy going back?" "No," he said firmly, but the uncertainty lingered in his voice. "I don't want to go back. I'm scared that my past will catch up with me." "Listen," she said, stepping closer and lowering her voice. "You've built something here. You've found friends and a community that cares about you. Don't let anyone take that away." "I've never felt this way before," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's like I'm discovering who I really am." Sarah smiled gently, her eyes shining with understanding. "Then hold on to that. You deserve to live your life the way you want, not the way someone else expects you to." William felt a warmth spread through him at her words, but the weight of doubt still loomed heavily in his heart. What if it's not real? What if this is all just a fantasy and I'm supposed to return to the man I once was? "Your past doesn't define you," she replied, her voice steady. "You've changed. You've grown. Embrace that. You're not that man anymore, and you don't have to be." He met her gaze, searching for reassurance, and found it there, an unwavering belief in his potential for change. In that moment, he realized that Sarah was becoming a crucial part of his journey, someone who not only saw the man he was, but also believed in the man he could be. "I just wish I could silence the doubts," he said, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "Then let's make new memories," Sarah suggested, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "How about a painting session? We can lose ourselves in creativity, and you can forget about the world for a while." That sounded like a balm to his frayed nerves. "Yeah, I'd like that," he said, a tentative smile breaking through the shadows of doubt. "Let's paint." As they gathered with the local artists in the park, surrounded by the vibrant colors of nature and the laughter of friends, William felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. He had fought so hard to create this new life, and he wasn't ready to let it slip away. But even as he immersed himself in the moment, the specter of his past lingered just beyond the edges of his consciousness, a reminder that he was still tethered to a life he couldn't fully remember, and a truth he had yet to confront. William sat at the small kitchen table in Sarah's cozy apartment, the soft morning light filtering through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow over the cluttered space. He stared blankly at the crumpled letter that had arrived that morning. The ink smudged slightly from the rain that had fallen the previous night. The words danced in his mind, refusing to settle as he thought about the implications of the message. It spoke of a man named Richard Marshall, a business rival from his past life, and hinted at a dark connection between him and the accident that had erased William's memory. "Are you okay?" Sarah's voice broke through his reverie, her brows knit with concern as she set a cup of steaming coffee in front of him. The rich aroma filled the air, but he found no comfort in it. I received another letter," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper as he pushed the paper towards her. "It mentions someone named Richard Marshall. They say he might have caused the accident." Sarah picked up the letter, her eyes scanning the text quickly. "William, this is serious. Do you think he's the reason for everything that happened to you?" "I don't know," he admitted, running a hand through his tousled hair, "but I feel like I need to find out. I can't just ignore it anymore." The resolve in his voice startled even him. It was a stark contrast to the uncertainty he had felt just days earlier. She put the letter down and met his gaze with a fierce intensity. "Then you should confront this investigator again. He might have more information about your past." William nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. The thought of facing the investigator again filled him with a mixture of dread and determination. "You're right. I need to know who I was, what I was involved in. But what if it's worse than I imagine?" "You won't know until you look," Sarah said softly, her hand reaching across the table to touch his. The warmth of her skin against his sent a tremor through him, grounding him in the moment, yet stirring conflicting emotions within. With a deep breath, William withdrew his hand, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on his mind. "I'll go see him," he said finally, standing up abruptly. "I need to do this alone." "William," Sarah called after him, her voice laced with concern. "Please be careful. You don't have to do this alone. I'm here for you." "I know," he replied, but guilt gnawed at him. He turned towards the door, his heart pounding not just from fear of the unknown, but from the feeling that he was about to step back into a world he had just begun to escape. As he walked down the familiar streets of the small town, the vibrant colors of the storefronts and the sound of laughter from children playing in the park felt like a stark contrast to the dark shadows looming over his past. He didn't want to lose the sense of belonging he had found, the friendships he had forged. But the pull of his former life was growing stronger with every step he took toward the investigator's office. When he arrived, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room cluttered with files and photographs pinned to a corkboard. The investigator, a rugged man with graying hair and a stubbled jaw, looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. "William Carter," he said, as he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I didn't expect you to come back so soon. You're not exactly the same man who walked in here a week ago." "Things have changed," William replied, his voice steady. "I want to know everything you have on Richard Marshall and what happened to me." The investigator studied him for a moment, then sighed. "It's not pretty. Your past is filled with betrayal, power struggles, and enemies lurking behind every corner. Marshall was a key player in your business dealings, and there's a reason you ended up in that accident. He wanted you out of the picture." William felt a chill run down his spine at the investigator's words. "Why? Was it just business or was it personal?" "Both, I suspect. You were becoming a threat to his ambitions. Your rise in the company was significant, and he didn't take kindly to competition." "The accident?" "It wasn't an accident, William. It was a setup." The weight of the investigator's revelation crashed over him like a wave, leaving him breathless. "The setup? But why would he go that far? What did I ever do to him?" "From what I gathered, you were about to make a deal that would have solidified your position in the market and put him at a disadvantage. He had the motive and the means to ensure you wouldn't walk away from that meeting." William's mind raced with the implications. The life he had built, the relationships he had formed, all of it was overshadowed by the dark clouds of his past. "I need to confront him," he said, a fire igniting within him. "I need to make him pay for what he did." The investigator shook his head, cautioning him. "You have to be careful, William. Marshall is not just a businessman. He's dangerous. He won't hesitate to protect his interests, even if it means going after you again." "I don't care," William replied, his voice firm. "I'm not running away anymore. I need to face this, no matter the cost." As he left the investigator's office, William felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. The confrontation with his past was inevitable, but it also meant risking everything he had come to cherish in this new life. Sarah's face flashed before his eyes, and he felt a pang of regret. Would she understand? Would she want him to face this danger alone? Later that evening, as he sat on the porch of Sarah's apartment, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. He heard footsteps approaching and looked up to see Sarah walking toward him, her expression a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "Hey, I was just thinking about you," she said, leaning against the railing. "Just trying to figure out my next steps," he replied, his voice heavy with the weight of his thoughts. "Did you talk to the investigator?" "Yes," William said, taking a deep breath. "And it's worse than I thought. Richard Marshall. He was behind the accident. He wanted me out of the way." Sarah's eyes widened, shock written across her face. That's horrifying, William. What are you going to do?" "I have to confront him," he said, determination hardening his resolve. "I can't let him get away with this." "William, please think about this. You're stepping into a dangerous game," she urged, her voice trembling. "I know, but I can't just sit back and let him control my life. I've fought too hard to build something real here," he replied, frustration creeping into his tone. "Is it worth risking everything?" she pressed, stepping closer, her eyes searching his for answers. "What if he retaliates? What if he goes after you again?" "I have to take that chance," he insisted, his heart racing. "I can't live in fear of my past." Just then, Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. "William, before you go, there's something I need to tell you." He paused, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "What is it?" "I care about you more than I've ever let on. I don't want to lose you, but I can't stand by and watch you put yourself in danger," she confessed, her voice breaking slightly. William's heart skipped a beat, the confession crashing over him like a tidal wave. "Sarah, Just promise me you'll be careful, please," she interrupted, her voice urgent. "You mean so much to me, and I can't bear the thought of you getting hurt again." The sincerity in her voice struck him deeply. He hesitated, torn between the urge to soothe her fears and the undeniable call of his past. "I promise I'll be careful," he said finally, reaching out to cradle her face in his hands. "But I have to do this." As their eyes locked, he saw the fear and hope mingling in hers, and he knew that whatever happened next would change everything for both of them. William Carter stepped out of the investigator's car, the chill of the city air biting against his skin. The skyline loomed over him, familiar yet foreign, like a ghost of a life he no longer recognized. The grand mansion where he had lived, a symbol of wealth and power, stood before him, but it was no longer resplendent. Dust clung to the windows, and the once vibrant garden was now a tangled mess of weeds and neglect. "Are you sure you want to do this?" the investigator asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. William turned to face him, determination etched across his features. "I need to know what happened. I can't move forward without understanding my past." With a slight nod, the investigator followed him up the cracked pathway, their footsteps echoing in the silence that surrounded the abandoned home. Each step felt heavier, as memories of lavish parties and polished marble floors flickered through William's mind. Remnants of a life that felt more like a dream than reality now. Entering through the grand double doors, William was hit by a wave of nostalgia mixed with despair. The foyer, once bustling with laughter and music, was now eerily quiet, the air thick with dust. "It's like a tomb," he muttered, running his fingers along the banister, feeling the rough texture of neglect. "People don't often want to return to places they've lost," the investigator said, peering into an adjacent room. "It's unsettling." William nodded, his heart heavy. "I didn't lose this place, I lost myself." They began to explore the mansion, moving from room to room. William's mind raced as he tried to reconcile the opulence surrounding him with the feelings of emptiness that had settled in his chest. In the living room, he found remnants of family portraits, their smiles frozen in time, a stark contrast to the loneliness he felt now. "Your family," the investigator began, but William cut him off. "I don't want to talk about them. Not yet." He continued his exploration, pushing through the memories that clung to the walls like cobwebs, until he stumbled upon a door he didn't remember. It was slightly ajar, a whisper of intrigue beckoning him closer. "William," the investigator called after him, "we should stick to the main areas." But William was already turning the handle, curiosity overpowering reason. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase that spiraled down into darkness. He glanced back at the investigator, who looked skeptical but followed him nonetheless. As they descended, the air grew cooler and a musty smell enveloped them. At the bottom, they found themselves in a dimly lit room filled with old boxes and papers scattered across the floor. William's heart raced as he stepped inside, the thrill of discovery igniting a fire within him. "What is all this?" he whispered, kneeling to examine the scattered documents. The investigator bent down beside him, flipping through the papers. "It looks like records, financial statements. Some of these are quite old." William picked up a file that had been pushed against the wall. As he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. The documents detailed shady dealings, questionable business transactions, and names he didn't recognize, but that sent a chill down his spine. This can't be right," he stammered, flipping through the pages frantically. "These look like contracts with my rival." "Seems like he was more involved in your life than you realized," the investigator said, his tone grave. "This could be proof of his schemes against you." William's fingers trembled as he sifted through the papers, revealing a series of letters that detailed not only business practices, but also personal notes, secrets about his family, hidden debts and betrayals. It felt as if he were peeling back layers of a life he had never known, each document a revelation that reshaped his understanding of the world he had come from. "William," the investigator interrupted, pointing to a particular document. "Look at this." William leaned closer, his eyes widening as he read the name at the top of the page. It was a name he had seen before, but in a different context. His biological parents. The letter detailed their involvement in a community initiative, the very community he had grown to love since losing his memory. "What does this mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It means there's more to your story than you realized," the investigator replied, his expression somber. "It seems your family wasn't just wealthy. They were part of something larger, something that may have influenced your upbringing." As William processed this new information, a wave of emotions crashed over him. Would he have been different had he known his true origins? Would he have lived a life more grounded in authenticity rather than power? But then, a sudden thought struck him. What if his adoptive family had hidden this from him? The very secrets that had defined their legacy were now unraveling before his eyes, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. "Why would they keep this from me?" he murmured, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "Fear, perhaps," the investigator suggested. "Fear of losing their grip on the wealth they held, or fear of the truth itself." William stood abruptly, his mind racing. "No, they can't just erase who I am. I deserve to know the truth." He began to search the room more thoroughly, searching for more clues, more pieces of a puzzle that was finally beginning to take shape. As he rifled through boxes, something caught his eye. A small leather-bound journal tucked away in the corner. He pulled it out and opened it, his heart racing as he recognized the handwriting. It was his mother's. The journal was filled with thoughts and musings, but one entry stood out to him. "We made the choice to keep William safe, to raise him away from the darkness that enveloped our pasts. But I fear that the truth will one day find him, and he will resent us for it." A lump formed in his throat as he read the words. It was a confession, a glimpse into the turmoil that had shaped his life. "William, we should go," the investigator urged, noticing the intensity of his emotion. "You can't change what has happened, but you can choose how to move forward." William closed the journal, the weight of the past heavy upon him. "I know," he replied, his voice steadier now, "but I need to confront this. I need to understand who I am and how my life ties into this community." As they made their way back to the surface, William felt a shift within him. The revelations about his biological parents and their connection to the community he had come to love sparked a realization. He didn't have to abandon his new identity. He could embrace it while still acknowledging the shadows of his past. Emerging into the light, William inhaled deeply. Gone was the man who defined himself by wealth and power. He was ready to forge a new path, one that intertwined his past with his present. "Let's go back," he said to the investigator, determination gleaming in his eyes. "I know what I want to do now." "Are you sure?" the investigator asked, his brow furrowed. "I am," William replied, a smile breaking through the weight of the day. "I'm ready to create a future that honors both the man I was and the man I'm becoming." With each step back to the car, William felt lighter, the burden of his past shifting into a foundation for his future. The city around him buzzed with life, and for the first time, he felt like he belonged, not to the mansion or the wealth it represented, but to the community that had welcomed him with open arms. A new chapter awaited him, one filled with purpose, authenticity, and a commitment to making a difference. As he glanced back at the mansion one last time, he knew he was ready to leave it behind and step into the light of his new life.